Hello and welcome to my channel, Rhino here. Today I'm looking at part 4 of Science Falsely So Called. We're getting there, guys, just 2 more parts after this. This time, we look at the evidence that dinosaurs lived at the same time as people. So let's go! Wow, look at all those Ica stones. I'm sure not a single one of them was faked by Basilio Uchuya, or other Peruvians using the same methods as Basilio.
The Ica civilization, they buried their people sitting up, wrapped up in a blanket, and they buried them with stones, various sizes from, softball size to beach ball size.
I'm just going to assume for argument's sake here that you're correct, because how the Ica people buried their dead is ultimately irrelevant to the larger point. But since most of the words uttered in this movie so far have been completely wrong in one way or another, it wouldn't surprise me if you were also wrong here.
These stones have carvings on them. About 500 of the stones have been found to have dinosaurs carved on them.
And do you know what all the ones with dinosaurs on them have in common? There is no good record of their discovery. There is a thriving market in Peru for these stones, and the vast majority of them are faked by the locals to sell to tourists. There are legitimate ones, but when any of them are excavated, they are extensively documented with important information like, say, the location where they're found. Essentially, if you can't show us exactly where any particular stone came from, then that stone cannot be assumed to be authentic. And just to satisfy all the pedants out there, when I say dinosaur in this video, I am referring to the extinct non-avian dinosaurs.
500 of these stones, at least 500 of them that have been found, have had every known dinosaur on these stones.
Out of the hundreds of thousands of Ica stones in existence, some 500 of them show dinosaurs. How impressive. And supposedly those 500 stones show all 700 known species of dinosaur. That actually would be impressive. And none of the dinosaur ones have been verified as being authentic, so back to not impressive. And I notice you're not mentioning the hundreds of stones that have images of alien spacecraft and UFOs and heart surgery, brain surgery, stuff like that. Dinosaurs live with people is the conclusion you want to draw, so when you find even the most shady, questionable evidence to support that conclusion, you jump on it, but you completely ignore the fact that the very same evidence you are using to say that dinosaurs and people coexisted can be used to say that ancient aliens gave us advanced tech. And remember, the guy who has the large collection of stones and hosts them in a museum in Peru also wrote a book about how the stones demonstrate that the Ica civilization had advanced technology and were capable of doing things like open heart surgery, brain transplants using telescopes, and interstellar travel. So if these stones demonstrate so conclusively that humans live with dinosaurs, then they just as conclusively demonstrate that the Ica civilization was an advanced race from the Pleiades cluster.
And how do you think the dinosaurs got eliminated from the world?
I think that it's been proven that an asteroid did it, and that they weren't completely eliminated. The big ones were. The small ones survived.
Well, color me impressed, he got something right. Well, mostly right. I'm tempted to quibble with his wording, but that's close enough.
So an asteroid hit this world, hit this
It's
Earth.
happened numerous times.
So an asteroid hit the Earth. Well, why didn't all the other creatures die?
What are you even getting at, Matt? Are you suggesting that asteroids have never hit the Earth? We have impact craters from them. All an asteroid is a big rock. We still get hit by small rocks floating around in space today. Why is it hard to believe that a big rock could have hit the Earth in the past? As far as why the other animals didn't die, I want to hear the raging atheist response before I throw my 2 cents in.
All the big stuff died. You have to study evolution.
So it's true that the evolutionary community does believe that an asteroid hit the Earth and killed off all of the big dinosaurs.
You know what? The raging atheist's answer seemed to be heading in the right direction, but you cut him off short. And now here you are, walking through a bookstore saying that it's true that we believe an asteroid killed off the big dinosaurs, as if that's some kind of horrible admission that's going to end up proving evolution wrong.
What I think is so silly about that is we still have big creatures today that were just as big as the dinosaurs.
Oh my god, Matt, you're the best. Yes, 65 million years ago, all the large animals were wiped out while the small ones survived. Now let me give a brief explanation. The asteroid that wiped out the dinosaurs would have been around 11 kilometers across at a minimum. The energy released from that impact would have drastically raised the temperatures on the surface of the whole Earth for several days after the impact. This increased heat would have killed off most of anything that couldn't escape it by going underground or in water. What did survive had to fight over now very limited resources. The smaller mammals and dinosaurs, whose diets consisted of insects and water-based plants, did well because insects and water plants were relatively abundant after the impact. But the large herbivores had nothing to eat, as most of the surface plants would have been killed off during the intense heat after the impact, and would not have had much chance to recover for years afterwards, as the planet would have had a layer of dust through the atmosphere that caused less sunlight to reach the surface. The large carnivores relied on the large herbivores for their food source, so they would have died off once the herbivores died off. This is why small animals tended to be the ones that survived. Less food to go around means that smaller bodies to sustain are a survival advantage. But plants can be very resilient. Even after approximately 2 years of almost no sunlight, some were able to survive, including some species of trees. With the survival of trees comes the evolutionary niche of animals that can get their food from the tops of trees. In other words, there is a selection pressure to grow big enough to eat tree leaves. With 65 million years between us and the extinction event, the new evolution of large animals to access this resource is not only unsurprising, it is expected. 65 million years is a long-ass time. Human beings have only been wearing clothing for about 170,000 years, so multiply how long we've been wearing clothes by 382, and that's how long these large animals had to evolve into what we see today. Plenty of time. In fact, the large mammals we have today, like giraffes and elephants, would probably never have evolved as long as the dinosaurs existed because the evolutionary niche of large herbivore had already been filled. So you can thank the extinction of the dinosaurs for the fact that large mammals exist.
So the trees were wiped out. Everything, all the big dinosaurs that were eating high above, the high stuff, couldn't do that no more.
So the asteroid was so close that it literally almost chopped their head off.
Oh, come on, Matt. I know he wasn't being super clear, but that is not how anyone thinks the large dinosaurs died. Why would you even say that? Are you trying to make yourself look like an idiot? If so, well done, you've succeeded.
That's about as ridiculous as everything else that the Big Bang and evolution teaches.
I've said this before, and it bears repeating. The Big Bang and evolution do not teach anything. I don't know why you feel the need to anthropomorphize these scientific theories like that, but it does not help your case.
I mean, they just come up with these crazy, wild theories, and it seems like they're almost just trolling us, trying to figure out how weird they can get, and people will still fall for this stuff.
Are you a troll, Matt? Because you put this clip right after you made a statement that made it look like you believe that the accepted idea is that the asteroid decapitated all the big dinosaurs. That is a patently absurd idea that nobody believes. If a dinosaur was close enough to the impact to be directly hit by it, that whole dinosaur would have been vaporized. Big dinosaur, small dinosaur, doesn't matter. No decapitation, vaporization. And no, I am not saying that all the big dinosaurs were vaporized. Only the ones that were directly in the asteroid's way. The rest died off in the way I explained earlier.
About dinosaurs being beheaded by asteroids, and it's just crazy. I mean, these people have a great imagination.
Wait. You're actually convinced that we think the big dinosaurs went extinct because they were beheaded by an asteroid? I don't even feel the need to write a joke here. This shit's funny enough on its own.
And that's why the big dinosaurs died off.
A lot of them had to duck for cover, you know, when these asteroids were coming over hitting.
It was one big one.
Like Star Wars, man, like sci-fi, you know?
I like how you're completely ignoring everything that he's saying in order to make really bad jokes based on a complete misunderstanding of his position. You're not very good at this whole conversation thing, are you? I feel like the whole time he's talking, you're not listening one bit. You're just waiting for him to pause for a breath so you can jump in and say what you planned on saying next no matter what he says.
It was one big one, but again, as I've said many times, prehistory is a best guess scenario.
Yeah, that's not the best way of putting it. It's not about guessing, it's about creating hypotheses that fit the data. In the case of the dinosaurs going extinct, there is data to suggest they went extinct around the same time as a massive asteroid hit the Earth. We know the asteroid hit, we have a crater in Mexico from it, we have an entire layer of iridium at the same spot in the geologic column everywhere on the planet from it. The closest thing to a guess comes in when we start modeling the different ways in which the impact would have affected the environment. How much dust and debris were kicked up into the atmosphere? Well, it depends on several variables that we can't pin down with 100% certainty, but it is certain that the large dinosaurs disappeared from the fossil record immediately after the impact event. Long story short, you are once again using the raging atheist tendency to word things poorly as a way to build a straw man against, well, all of science, really.
I do hear about...
This is the point where if this were a movie, I would be bragging about the fact that I know this guy. He's in a movie. But it's really just a long-form YouTube video, so it's not that exciting.
Aztec pottery or these, Indian pottery that has what it looks like to be dinosaurs on it. But, what I would say there is that it's coincidental for it. Those aren't actually dinosaurs. Those were just bad drawings that look like dinosaurs to us now.
Interesting that he's talking about pottery, and you show pictures of the Ica stones, which I'm not sure if you noticed or not, but they are not pottery. Also, GE here was responding to Matt bringing up a claim of swords with dinosaurs on the hilt, and GE mentioned how he isn't aware of any of those, so he started talking about the things he is aware of, like pottery and some carvings.
Not to mention, the pirates obviously saw these things. They have them sculpted on the edge of their pirate ships. Swords, back in, I believe it was 1971, that were discovered. I mean, just swords with dinosaurs carved out on them, brachiosaurus, completely matching the fossils that have been, discovered. All of these things point to the fact that these people had to have seen these creatures and observe these creatures, because it's not like it's like if I drew an alien perfectly and then all of a sudden, hey, I dig up one, people are going to be like, wow, did he actually see this? And the odds of drawing something like that consistently throughout history is very slim. And so that, I believe, points to the fact that these people did walk with dinosaurs, and the Bible says that out of his mouth go burning lamps and sparks of fire leap out. The dinosaurs they discovered have, the dragons they discovered have chambers in the back of their head so they can breathe fire. But that's just a couple things. I mean, I could go on and on for hours, John, but I'm not going to, because I don't want to eat up all your time, but I would like to hear your response to that, though.
Well, I mean, you can probably see the confusion on my face. For one thing, dinosaurs never breathe fire like dragons. I'm not exactly sure where you got that they have chambers in the back of their what the fuck ever, and they spout fire. Like, I don't know where you're getting that. I haven't seen these swords that you're talking about. I do hear about Aztec pottery or these Indian pottery that has what it looks like to be dinosaurs on.
Here's a picture of a vase from the Larco Museum, an authentic pre-Columbian vase of the same area of Peru as the Ica stones supposedly are. And I'll point out that the creationist site on which I found this vase does not consider it good evidence for coexistence with dinosaurs because, and I quote, "The problem with using such a vase as evidence that humans and dinosaurs coexisted, however, is that if we claim the depiction on this vase is a realistic representation of something, we have to at least entertain the possibility that the monkey-headed monster on the next vase was also real." I did ask GE about this particular interaction, and he took some time out on his wedding day of all days to record a reply, so let's let him tell us what he was talking about in his own words.
Hey, heathens! So thank you, Vice Rhino, for allowing me to kind of give some context for this particular portion of Matt's video here. The video that this came from is actually much longer, and Matt spouts off a whole bunch of different, ideas about his whole concept of evidence. Like, he thinks that Confederates shot down pterodactyls, and he thinks that a bad photograph underwater proves that plesiosaurs still are swimming around Loch Ness. So, basically, Matt here is taking me out of context in order to make it seem like I'm just writing off all of these obviously faked things as just being bad artists, and that's not actually what I'm doing. Here's what I was thinking about when I mentioned ancient pottery, stoneworks, and cave paintings and everything like that. This is what I was actually referencing. And as you can tell, this is not anything like what he showed in his pictures, which all of those, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, are fake. But regardless of that point, this right here is actually taken from an article on the Smithsonian magazine website. And in it, they talk about how superficially it looks like a stegosaurus. But when you actually take the context of the culture, the people, the places that it was at, it more looks like maybe a rhinoceros or a boar or something like that, set against a leafy background. So it's quite easy to see how this would seem like a stegosaurus, and this is in fact the type of art that I was referencing. So Matt, you tried to take me out of context to prove your point, but everybody can go and see my video where I interviewed you, and we discussed things like the Confederate shooting down the pterodactyl, pareidolia, that makes you see, things like this, that makes you see like a stegosaurus in a really old craftwork, stonework, something, makes you see shit like this in these old depictions. Thanks, Vice Rhino, for allowing me to come on here and explain what I was talking about instead of, like Matt, and take me out of context and, I guess, ridicule me or something, or make it sound like I'm crazy. Thanks, heathens! I'll see you guys later.
So all of these discoveries of these stones that have been discovered, every single one of these, every different artist was just a bad artist.
Compared to what we have now, obviously they were bad artists, but no, I'm saying that they drew like animals that they saw around them, and they weren't exactly representing them correctly.
This was taken from a live discussion that you had with GE, and I'm inclined to think that, since he mentioned pottery and cave paintings, he was thinking of pottery and cave paintings that creationists usually bring up, because there are actually authentic ancient pieces of pottery and cave paintings that do vaguely resemble dinosaurs. The Ica-stones are something that we rarely come across in our travels through creationist YouTube, precisely because they are such a lousy claim. So you were talking about Ica-stones that were faked by a guy who we can actually identify, and GE was thinking of stuff like this.
Well, there must be a lot of bad artists all over the world then, since there are all kinds of drawings and...
Oh, that's funny. I picked that picture to represent a really bad example of something that's very obviously a case of us imposing our knowledge of dinosaurs onto a cave painting that has an extremely tiny resemblance to a dinosaur only if you look at it just right. And that's the picture you chose to show while making a point about how everyone must have been a really bad artist. And I will point out here that I do disagree slightly with GE on this point. They're not necessarily bad artistic representations of existing animals. At least some of them are imaginative creations based on motifs of existing animals, because that's what humans do. We don't seem capable of creating anything truly new. When we invent a new mythological creature, it's always some combination of other creatures. Even when we invent new aliens for science fiction movies, they are usually an amalgamation of creatures that can be found on Earth.
Paintings of dinosaurs all over the world. So I guess bad art's been around for a while.
I mean, you say that as if it's supposed to be surprising. It takes talent and practice to be a good artist, and it's something that most people never achieve. So the vast majority of people on the planet today are bad artists, and you're surprised that this trend has remained consistent throughout history?
What those stones depict isn't going to back up your creationist story, because those stones depict aliens coming down.
So you say that aliens would be perfectly depicted on these stones, but not the dinosaurs.
Well, I don't know if that's what he was actually saying, but it could be that he was just trying to make the same point that I have made here, that if those stones are your evidence that people live with dinosaurs, then they are just as good evidence for ancient aliens.
They clearly show dinosaurs and humans together. Now, to the evolutionist mindset, this is simply impossible, because they've already decided dinosaurs, died off 66.2 or whatever it is million years ago, whatever number they're up to now.
I don't know why you're acting like that number fluctuates all the time. It has been 65 million years for as long as I can remember. In fact, here's a clip from a Bill Nye the Science Guy episode that aired in September of 1993.
And they all died out about 65 million years ago.
Yep, same number. I'm sure it has changed in the past as we narrowed into the correct number, but that's the way science works. That's the purpose of the error bars. As we gather more data, the error bars get smaller and smaller. The error bars on the date that the dinosaurs went extinct are relatively small now. And there is enough data supporting these numbers that even if you did find a genuine, authentic Ica stone with depictions of creatures that are undeniably dinosaurs on it, that would do nothing to change that date. Because ultimately, your whole line of reasoning here seems to be that people can only draw pictures of things that they personally saw and that were alive at the time that they saw them. This whole argument can be derailed with the idea that they might have found some fossils and then drew pictures of what they thought the fossils would have looked like when they were alive. We know this is possible because it's what we do today. And as a little side note, if people living with dinosaurs is the only reasonable explanation for these drawings, then where are the feathers on the theropods? Because we know now that most theropods had feathers over most of their bodies. So if they were drawing from actual live theropods, you'd think they would have gotten that little detail right.
I know what they depict. I know that this looks like a giant lizard. You're gonna say what, that looks like a Tyrannosaurus Rex.
I mean, even considering the fact that those stones were faked, if that particular one were shown to be authentic, it's not close enough to an actual T-Rex to say for certain that this is depicting a T-Rex. For one, it's got 5 toes. T-Rex had 3 forward-facing toes and one kinda sideways-pointing mini-toe thing. And all the images of that particular stone are too low-res to be sure, but it also appears to have many more than the 2 claws that they had on their forelimbs. The skull shape is also wrong. So from these clues, any paleontologist would deduce that it is not, in fact, a T-Rex because the anatomy doesn't fit. But that's also assuming that it wasn't a forgery, and since we know that there is a market for fake ichthyostones, that is the most likely explanation. So our options here seem to be that either all of paleontology, archaeology, and anthropology are completely wrong about almost every conclusion they have ever drawn, or a stone that is done in the same style and manner as a bunch of known fakes was faked. Which seems more likely?
I think the fact that there are humans living with dinosaurs all through history is obvious. They're mentioned in the Bible.
You know what else exists in the Bible? Unicorns. But I don't think even you guys accept the existence of unicorns. You're willing to interpret that as being rhinoceroses, but somehow even though things like Behemoth perfectly describe hippos, they have to be sauropods.
God knew what the objections would be, and he's already covering it right here. I made Behemoth with thee.
Yeah, sure, he made hippos with humans. Hippos predate humans by a few million years, but at least they still live with us today, so that's closer to the truth than if you insist on interpreting Behemoth as a dinosaur. And the real question is that if God knew what all the objections would have been in advance, why didn't he give a less ambiguous description? That's the main objection I have to it. I've been calling it a hippo because that's the best fit in my opinion based on the verses about it sitting in the water amongst the reeds, but an argument could also be made for it being an elephant. And of course, there's creationists who insist on interpreting it as being a sauropod. God needs to be more clear and concise is what I'm saying here.
He eateth grass as an ox.
It's funny how you say that it eats grass, literally as you show a video of a sauropod eating not grass. Their necks were long so they could reach the food that was high up. They didn't eat grass. Of course, the main evidence that we have that they didn't eat grass is that grass just didn't exist at the same time as they did, but since you don't accept the actual scientific timelines, you won't accept that. But that is a fact. Grass didn't start to evolve until around 60 to 55 million years ago, 5 to 10 million years after these guys went extinct. And we also have fossilized dinosaur poop, which allows us to see what they ate. Guess what we've never found in it? Grass.
Lo now. His strength is in his loins, and the force is in the navel of his belly. He moveth his tail like a cedar. The sinews of his stones are wrapped together.
This is the only verse in that entire passage that could possibly make you picture a sauropod. Hippos don't have tails like cedars, right? Neither do elephants. Just look at those big tree-like tails on the sauropods. Except that the verse doesn't say that its tail looks like a cedar. It says its tail moves like a cedar. Cedars are not very sturdy trees. They bend and sway in the wind pretty easily, and they grow very slowly. Kinda like this hippo tail, or this elephant tail. But that's not where this ends. Oh no, not by a long shot. You see, if you read the whole verse, the second part of the verse is talking about the animal's testicles, using stones as a euphemism. This implies that the first part of the verse is also a euphemism. And since the word used for move in this verse could also be translated as extends or makes stiff, it is quite likely that it is not talking about the animal's tail at all, but rather its penis. So congratulations, your one instance of a dinosaur in the Bible turns out to be a dick joke made about an elephant or a hippo.
And Behemoth is clearly a dinosaur. If you just look at the sheer size, the proportions.
The Bible actually doesn't give much of a reference for size or proportions. Except that whatever creature this is, it does have to be small enough to take shelter in the reeds. I don't know about you, but I have never seen reeds that grow tall enough to hide a sauropod. Hippos, on the other hand, actually hide in reeds.
And when it talks about he moves his tail like a cedar.
He gets boners that can be compared to trees. Biblical dick joke, y'all.
And then people say, oh, it's an elephant. Have you ever seen an elephant's tail?
Stiff as a cedar.
He that made him can make his sword to approach unto him. And I believe that that is a foreshadowing of the fact that this animal's going to go extinct.
Or, since hippos are really dangerous creatures who are responsible for a fairly large number of human deaths every year, it might just be a caution to not even try and fight them unless you think you're as powerful as God. So get yourself some iron chariots first, since that's the kind of strength it takes to beat God.
But Satan is using God's own creatures, i.e. the dinosaurs, to turn people away from God. It's a very effective way to get kids to doubt the Bible.
Yes, it is. Because if you teach that dinosaurs lived at the same time as people because the Bible says it, then when the kids learn that you were wrong about that, they then see the Bible as being wrong about that and start to wonder what else it could be wrong about. When you insist that a flawed book like the Bible is inerrant and claim that stuff like the Behemoth passage must be taken literally and interpreted as being a dinosaur, you're setting the stage for future disbelief.
And the kids can't even read yet, and they already think the Earth is millions of years old because of dinosaurs.
Heaven forbid we teach real science to kids who haven't learned how to read yet. And on a completely unrelated note, I feel like now is a good time to point out that Kent has on his shelf what looks to me like a dildo shaped like a flagellar motor, so he can masturbate while being stimulated by irreducible complexity. Completely irrelevant, but I couldn't let it slide forever. And that's basically it for the dinosaur portion of Matt's video. It looks like we have Ica stones and a vague and poetic Bible verse about a hippo. One thing I will say about Matt is that he never fails to underwhelm. My comment of the day today is from Vine101, who says, Jesus rose from the dead, God is real, you'll meet him one day, and all will be clear then, buddy. Those who don't want the truth won't get it, no matter how many reasons you give them. With no God, the whole idea of right, wrong, and truth crumples. Your words are mere sophistry. Ah, yes, the good old argument from, you'll know I'm right after you're dead when nobody can verify it. And I actually have never heard a good reason why the existence of God is the only thing that could possibly give us any concept of right and wrong and truth. Truth is that which comports with reality. How does the existence or non-existence of God change that? As far as right and wrong are concerned, the fact that different cultures have different systems of morals throws that right out of the window. And with all that being said, I'll let Matt have the last word on this one.
Honestly, John, I don't know a ton of technical terms. I'm very simple when it comes to science. I just enjoy simple science.